I've always wondered what would happen if Naruto was the reincarnation of Ashura as well as Indra. Obviously, in the canon story, he is the reincarnation, many times over, of Ashura Otsutsuki, the son of Hagoromo. But there are many what ifs as Indra as his reincarnate. And so, what would happen if we combined the two? Canon along with fan made, what if Naruto was the reincarnation of both Ashura and Indra? And this story begins on the night that Naruto was born, also known as the Nine Tails attack. Obviously, here things would go vastly different. No, not really, I'm just kidding. Obviously, it wouldn't change. But there is a change that would prove to make a huge difference later on. And that would be Hagoromo interfering with the reincarnation cycle. Obviously, Ashura already had its host as Naruto, an innocent young boy whose fate would be a harsh one. Indra having a soon-to-be prodigy as his new host. But Hagoromo had enough. After hundreds, even thousands of years of bloodshed between his sons, their descendants, and even their reincarnations many years later on, Hagoromo had enough. They were killing each other for practically no reason. And so, this would need to end. Now. Hashirama and Madara proved to be two of the most powerful warriors in the last 100 years. And these could prove to be the same. If they were to grow up like their predecessors, it would mean so much death and destruction that Hagoromo was not ready for anymore. And so he decided, with all the energy that had been laying dormant, building up over the years, he would finally put it to use, and changed Indra and Ashura's spirit, going towards Sasuke and Naruto's bodies respectively, and diverge Indra's along into Naruto. Now I'm aware that Sasuke was born a little bit earlier than Naruto, I believe like 6 days, so I'm just gonna say Hagoromo kept Indra in check until Naruto was born and then put them both into Naruto's body. And so both Ashura and Indra found themselves in the same body as their energies started to clash already. Hagoromo, although perhaps having prevented bloodshed, still had many worries. Such powerful energies clashing in the mind of a young child, it could have serious implications. And if that child decided to go down the wrong path, with the immense power he got from both reincarnations, it could also, well, not look very good. But Naruto was his ace. So innocent, he would never go down the wrong way. He saw even just when he was born, Naruto was a brave and persistent warrior, never to betray his word. But sadly, as good as Naruto's spirit was, he could not save his parents. He was merely a baby, and so his father and mother sacrificed themselves to save the village. And now we're gonna do a time skip. Obviously nothing much would happen here. Naruto would go to an adoption center, and at the age of 4 be kicked out because of, well, Danzo's shenanigans. But here something would change gravely, and that is Kurama's influence on Naruto. It just wouldn't be that great. And by the way, since we're already combining both opposites, Ashura and Indra, I'm also gonna combine the negative and positive side of the QB and say Naruto got the yin and yang. So yeah, he's gonna be a little busted in this. But well, let's see. Not only is the QB much more kinder, as well, now he has a positive side to him, he's also very powerful. But Indra and Ashura are sure to keep that in check. Kurama is incredibly afraid of Indra, as a lot of his reincarnations, especially in recent history, Madara, controlled and abused Kurama's power. And those were only a fraction of Indra's power. With Indra himself, even 10 Kuramas could not even hope to fight him. And with Ashura there, he could not do anything bad to this child. But that doesn't mean peace was in Naruto's mindscape. Ashura and Indra were clashing constantly, and had actually been arguing non-stop for the past 3 years, trying to shift the blame of the past 1,000 years of bloodshed between their two clans and families. Which is why Naruto cried a lot as a baby. Like, a lot. I mean, imagine your parents arguing for 3 years straight, and then imagine no matter where you go, you hear it in the back of your head. Not very pleasant, is it? And yet, finally, they seemed to be done. They didn't come to any kind of agreement, they weren't happy, but they were done arguing. And so, Naruto seemed to actually be able to concentrate on whatever he wanted to do. And due to the situation, he became mature very quickly. Getting kicked out of the only place he could really call home was quite depressing, and all of his possible friends, or actual friends, were gone. So there really wasn't much for Naruto to do at this point, but just to try to fill his time walking, playing in his room, whatever. The only person that was kind to him was Hiruzen and Ichiraku, who often gave him food without him having to pay for it. But all three of the spirits felt bad for Naruto. Indra was not a big fan. I mean, all his reincarnates tried to destroy the Senju and therefore also the Uzumaki clan, as the Uzumakis are a cousin of the Senju. So he really did not like Naruto and didn't want to feel pity for him. But he saw how miserable his life was, and so he really had no choice but to feel bad for him. All of these things combined would mean that neither of the three spirits, the three ghosts, reincarnations, tailed beasts, whatever you want to call them, neither of them blocked Naruto's chakra or try to influence him. Well, obviously, they wanted to influence him, but they didn't aggressively pour their chakra into him. You know, like, they kind of left him to be on his own. And Naruto's life was pretty much the same. Pretty bad, might I add, up until the age of 7. And it was on his 7th birthday that everything would change. On his birthdays, he would always get beatings, obviously, as sure was his birthday, great to celebrate, right? But then you remember he was born on the night of the Nine-Tails attack, and so it was also a day of mourning. And whenever that day rolled around, the villagers seemed to hate Naruto with all they could. Throw bottles, chase him through the streets, comment mean things, and just all around make him feel even more unwelcome than he already was, if that's even possible. I mean, no one really accepted him, even before, and on his birthdays, it wasn't just not accepting, it was downright hating. And so he was finally caught by 3 Chunin and 2 Genin, all of whom's parents died in the Nine-Tails attack. And so they blamed Naruto himself for that. He was the Nine-Tails, that's what they were told by Danzo. And so, well, let's say Naruto didn't come out of it unscathed. He was bruised, bloody, full of sweat, tears, and would take weeks to recover. After 5 hours of laying unconscious in the streets, finally he managed to wake up and drag himself to his home, where he threw himself on his bed and then fell unconscious again. When finally, after 7 full years, Ashura decided to talk to Naruto. He tried to sympathize with him. I mean, they both did go through some very rough patches. But it was hard for Ashura to really sympathize to Naruto's situation. Sure, Indra always got all the fame and love for the absolute prodigy he was, but Ashura was never really an outcast or shun out. And so, while sure he had gone through a lot of beatings, that was mostly on the battlefield. Not so much from his own people, his own village. The ones that you had dreams of protecting in the future. So Naruto did, of course. He wanted to be the Hokage. And so it was hard for even Ashura, who had lived many, many years and watched the world unfold in many bodies. It was hard for even him to really understand how Naruto felt. Same with Indra. Though Indra did have something to say about being backstabbed by his people. He, well, let's say, had an experience with his own family backstabbing him. At least that's what he explained to Naruto. But he really didn't understand the story. And Ashura didn't want him to hear Indra's story. And so they decided to both sit together. By the way, this was all happening in Naruto's mindscape. They all sat together, Ashura, Indra, and Naruto, and explained the story, their story. The story starting from Kaguya to Hagoromo and Hamura to themselves and their future reincarnations. And Kurama later joined in when there was a little part about the tailed beasts, obviously. But they really didn't do much for the first few hundred years, as of course they were babies. Quite cute ones, may I add. And so Naruto got to hear an incredibly story that he would definitely not hear for the last time, and would be expanded on many, many times in the future, as there was so much to tell, it couldn't be fit all in one story in one go. It would take hours, even days on end, to explain the full width of the story, with so many different perspectives, little anecdotes, and personal feelings on the matter, as well as many, many curious questions from Naruto. I mean, it was quite a weird story, with aliens and all that. That seemed like only in kids' stories, but guess it was real. And he really didn't know what to do with it for the first few days. But hearing of these great powers and battles, Naruto told them about his dream of wanting to be a Hokage. And he told them that he wants to do it, but so far at least, he's weak. Really weak. He can't even defend himself from people his own age. Matter of fact, sometimes even people younger than him, little kids, say mean things, and he can't do anything to protect himself. How sad is that? How embarrassing is that for him? He wants people to recognize and respect him, not bully him and call him a monster for really no reason. And after hearing all that, Kurama did explain his side of the nine-tailed story, which once again enlightened Naruto on the matter. But Indra took a different approach to Naruto's problems. He didn't want to give a sentimental speech and story and a good message. He wanted Naruto to achieve his goals. Sure, it wasn't an Uchiha or anything that he really liked, but if it meant that this kid would become happy, well, let's do it. And so, instead of preparing another cool story for Naruto, he decided to train the young kid. His biggest problem right now was not being able to run fast enough from the Chunin and Genin, right? So why doesn't he practice running? Indra suggested. Long distances as well as sprints, as well as basically anything else, but mainly those two things, as sometimes people like to chase him for a long time to try to exhaust him. Or they just want to scare him off, and then he lets you sprint off. And so, knowing both is important. Ashura and Kurama were actually kind of surprised by this. Indra was never really the kind of guy to just come out and want to help someone, especially if there was nothing he himself could gain from it. And it was an Uzumaki, if anything. So why would he help him? But Ashura was too afraid to ask. He was happy that Indra was helping. And so Ashura wanted to come up with a plan to also help in a similar fashion. But he decided to go for the spiritual aspect. Not as much running away from his enemies, but deceiving them. And he wanted to teach Naruto the clone jutsu, with which he could set up a chop where its chi runs away. Or perhaps he doesn't even need to run. He makes a clone and then he's gone. Walks off, enjoys the rest of his day. Doesn't need to scare away. And so Naruto learned both physical and spiritual. And learned some chakra control, especially with the help of Kurama. But Indra and Ashura, I'm sure they could teach someone how to use chakra control. I mean, they basically invented it. Indra is basically the inventor of ninjutsu and hand signs. So, I think they can manage to teach a 7-year-old how to do a normal clone jutsu. But speaking of normal clone jutsu, Indra came up with an idea. Sure, this clone jutsu is great, and people seeing it from afar would chase him. But as soon as they even throw anything, or even a strong gush of wind comes, they would see that this isn't real. And even any shinobi with some sort of knowledge on the matter would know that's a clone, not a real person. And so for the actual enemies, the Genin, the Chunin, or even the Anbu, it wouldn't do anything. And so he thought of a way to have an actual physical clone, as clones, if you don't know, are really just not real. They're an imitation, a bluff. But something like the shadow clone or wood clone are real. They're physical. And so Indra wanted to make something like that. Obviously, he didn't know of the existence of the shadow clone, as I believe the second Hokage created it. I could be wrong, but I'm just gonna say he doesn't know that those exist. But Ashura can help with this. Ashura obviously is a master of wood style, as all of his reincarnations are. Not really all of them, I just know Hashirama is a really strong wood user, so I'm gonna say all of them have a wood affinity, right? Well, the Senju ones at least. Obviously Naruto's in Senju. But now Naruto will have wood style. Just gonna say that outright. I mean, Indra and Ashura, he's gonna have wood style, alright? Especially being taught by them. And so Ashura thought of a way of actually hardening the wood in the wood style to not just become a cloud and make a clone, but really make a wood clone. Like, make a clone out of actual wood that could withstand 1, 2, maybe 3 hits if you master it. It would become a physical replica that could perhaps even be used to fight in the future. It was kind of OP. But oh well, with all that free time and free energy not being used for any kind of battle in the last years, he was able to be very creative with his chakra. And Ashura and Indra created many new jutsus with very niche needs like this in the coming months and years. And so, with Naruto learning all these jutsus, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode. Now, I know this episode might seem a little bit lackluster, but just know, when I compile this all into a movie, I will remake this. This is just basically my initial ideas. I know it's kind of weird to make into an actual video, but that's how I'm going to do it. Probably not for all series, I just wanted to try it here, so I can reflect on this and make a better version for the actual movie. So, look out for that. Anyways, see you in the next one.